Which two options are valid data migration strategies for a Windows upgrade scenario? Select two answers. A. Using Windows Autopilot to reinstall the OS. B. Migrating essential data to OneDrive before deployment. C. Using enterprise state roaming to preserve settings. D. Performing a full system backup to USB drives only. The correct answers are B. Migrating essential data to OneDrive before deployment, and C. Using enterprise state roaming to preserve settings. Now let's explain why these are correct. Migrating essential data to OneDrive before deployment ensures that files are preserved in the cloud, reducing reliance on the local machine and allowing users to easily retrieve their documents after the upgrade. For example, if a laptop fails during deployment, data in OneDrive remains safe and accessible from any device. Additionally, using enterprise state roaming preserves user settings and preferences by synchronizing them across devices through Azure AD. This means a user can log into a new device and find their desktop layout, browser settings, and application preferences already in place. On the other hand, Windows Autopilot focuses on device configuration and provisioning, not transferring user data, so it cannot be considered a data migration method. Likewise, performing a full system backup to USB drives, while technically possible, is outdated for enterprise environments because it lacks scalability and can be prone to loss or damage, making cloud-based strategies far more reliable. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Microsoft Entra ID is a multi-tenant cloud directory service that uses REST APIs for queries and supports authentication protocols such as OAuth. Now let's go through the explanation. Microsoft Entra ID is described as multi-tenant because it is designed to host directory instances for multiple organizations while keeping their data logically separate. This architecture is essential for scalability and security in cloud environments. Furthermore, unlike traditional Active Directory domain services that rely on LDAP, Microsoft Entra ID uses REST APIs over HTTP or HTTPS for directory queries, which makes it better suited for web and cloud-based applications. Additionally, OAuth is one of the modern authentication protocols it supports, alongside SAML and OpenID Connect, enabling secure access to resources without sharing user credentials directly. For example, when you sign into Microsoft 365 or a third-party app with your work account, OAuth facilitates the process by issuing tokens that validate your session without exposing your password to the service itself. This combination of multi-tenancy, REST-based access, and token-driven authentication makes Microsoft Entra ID both flexible and secure for modern identity management. Which three account types can be used with Microsoft Entra ID? Select three answers. A. Organizational account. B. External organizational account. C. Guest service principal. D. Microsoft account. The correct answers are A. Organizational account, B. External organizational account, and D. Microsoft account. Let's break this down. An organizational account is created within the tenant for internal users, meaning employees in your organization log in with these accounts to access company resources. In contrast, an external organizational account comes from another Microsoft Entra tenant, but can be granted access for collaboration, such as a partner organization working on a shared project. Additionally, a Microsoft account like those used for Outlook.com or Xbox Live can be linked for administrative tasks or specific access scenarios. However, a guest service principal does not qualify here because it represents an application identity, not a human user account, and is used for app-to-app authentication rather than end-user access. This combination of account types ensures Microsoft Entra ID supports both internal operations and secure collaboration with external partners. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. You can use PowerShell 5.1 or PowerShell 7 Plus to manage Microsoft Entra using Microsoft Graph SDK. True dynamic group membership can be based on user or device attributes. True, Microsoft 365 groups are not mail-enabled by default. False, Microsoft Entra Connect Express settings support password synchronization and automatic upgrades. True. Let's explain. You can indeed use either PowerShell 5.1 or 7 Plus with the Microsoft Graph SDK to manage Microsoft Entra, giving administrators flexible scripting options. Likewise, dynamic group membership rules allow automated group assignment based on user or device properties such as department or operating system, which simplifies ongoing management. However, Microsoft 365 groups are actually mail-enabled by default to facilitate collaboration through shared mailboxes and calendars, so the statement claiming otherwise is false. Finally, Microsoft Entra Connect's Express settings do support both password synchronization and automatic upgrades, making it easier to keep on-premises and cloud identities in sync without heavy manual configuration. Select the correct options from the drop-downs to complete the statement. The retirement phase includes removing legacy systems from production. IT teams must use tools to wipe hard drives securely and complete administrative processing to update inventory systems. Here's the explanation. The retirement phase is the stage in the IT asset lifecycle where devices are taken out of active service. At this point, one key priority is ensuring no sensitive information is left behind, which is why wiping hard drives securely is essential. This could involve using specialized software to overwrite data multiple times, making recovery impossible. After that, administrative processing comes into play, which involves updating inventory systems, adjusting asset records, and ensuring accounting reflects the removal of the device. For example, when a company retires a batch of laptops, the IT team not only sanitizes the drives, but also marks them as disposed of in the asset management system, ensuring accurate tracking and compliance. For each planning activity, drag it to the appropriate boxes in the correct match column to match it with its description. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Predicts future computing resource needs. Demand forecasting involves application compatibility testing and hardware selection. Computer selection includes standardization policies and device replacement frequency. Computer strategy helps determine whether cloud deployment is suitable. Deployment methods chooses which new features to adopt and how to implement them. Design configuration. Now for the explanation. Demand forecasting is about predicting future computing resource needs so IT teams can plan budgets and capacity, ensuring they have enough processing power and storage for upcoming projects. Computer selection focuses on choosing the right hardware, software, and peripherals, which also involves checking compatibility with applications. Meanwhile, computer strategy covers the broader organizational approach, including standardization policies, bring your own device decisions, and how often devices should be replaced. Deployment methods examine the best way to roll out solutions, such as whether a cloud deployment is cost-effective and technically feasible. Lastly, design configuration is about deciding which new features or tools to implement and how to integrate them into the organization's IT environment, ensuring they align with the overall strategy. For each application delivery method or platform, drag it to its correct characteristic. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Centralizes app deployment and policy enforcement. Microsoft Intune supports LOB apps, package deployment, and BYOD access policies. Microsoft Intune streams apps to clients without installing them locally. Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, provides a full virtual desktop environment from the cloud. Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365 allows app installs based on user group membership or on demand. Microsoft Intune. Now for the explanation. Microsoft Intune handles centralized application deployment and policy enforcement, ensuring apps are deployed consistently and securely across devices. It also supports line of business applications, package deployments, and bring your own device protections, which is crucial for organizations with mixed device ownership. On the other hand, Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 specialize in delivering virtualized environments. They can stream apps to users without requiring local installation, ideal for scenarios like contractor access or short-term projects. They also provide full virtual desktops from the cloud, giving remote workers a complete Windows experience without the need for on-premises hardware. By combining these platforms, organizations can cover both traditional app deployment and modern virtual desktop needs efficiently. Arrange the following steps in the correct order to connect to Microsoft Entra using the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Install the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK. Open PowerShell 5.1 or later, or PowerShell Core. Run the connect mggraph commandlet. Sign in to your Microsoft Entra account Begin managing Microsoft Entra objects via Microsoft Graph. Here's the explanation. The first step is installing the Microsoft Graph PowerShell SDK, as it provides the necessary commandlets to interact with Microsoft Entra. Once installed, you open PowerShell 5.1 or a later version, ensuring the environment supports the SDK. Next, running the Connect mggraph commandlet initiates the connection process. You then sign in to your Microsoft Entra account using the prompted authentication method, which could be multi-factor authentication if configured. Finally, after successfully signing in, you can start managing Microsoft Entra objects through Microsoft Graph, such as creating users, managing groups, or adjusting settings. This order is fixed because each step builds on the previous one. You're responsible for refreshing desktop hardware for a department. The existing PCs are aging, and you've been asked to determine if upgrading or replacing is more cost-effective. What should you assess first? Select one answer. A, the residual value of old systems. B, how users connect to organizational resources. C, the age, performance, and upgrade cost of the current systems. D, how many PCs are currently out of warranty. The correct answer is C, the age, performance, and upgrade cost of the current systems. Here's why. Age, performance, and upgrade cost directly influence whether an upgrade or a replacement is the smarter choice. For instance, if systems are slow, outdated, and costly to upgrade, replacement often yields better long-term value. The residual value of old systems, while useful for financial planning, doesn't determine technical viability. How users connect to organizational resources matters for compatibility, but not for deciding whether to upgrade or replace. Finally, the number of PCs out of warranty impacts support considerations, but it's secondary to the system's overall performance and upgrade potential. Your company plans to replace aging desktops and deploy a new set of devices. You're tasked with preparing the environment before deployment. You also want the hardware vendor to apply specific configurations before shipping. Select two answers. A, set up a configuration policy in Microsoft Entra ID. B, provide the vendor with required hardware configurations. C, reserve space for securely staging incoming hardware. D, skip inspection if vendor testing is confirmed. The correct answers are B, provide the vendor with required hardware configurations, and C, reserve space for securely staging incoming hardware. Here's why. Providing the vendor with required hardware configurations ensures devices arrive pre-configured to your specifications, saving setup time and reducing the chance of configuration errors. This is especially useful for large-scale rollouts where consistency is key. Reserving space for securely staging incoming hardware is equally important. It gives your team a safe area for unpacking, inventorying, and preparing devices before they're deployed to end users. Setting up a configuration policy in Microsoft Entra ID is incorrect because such policies are defined in Intune, not Entra ID. Skipping inspection if vendor testing is confirmed is also a bad practice, as hardware should always be inspected upon arrival to catch potential shipping damage or configuration mismatches. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Microsoft Entra Join supports seamless access to on-premises resources when the device has line of sight to the domain controller. True. You must have a Microsoft Entra Premium P2 license to join devices. False. SSO works only when connected to the corporate network. False. Microsoft Entra Join supports secure user access through Windows Hello. True. Here's why. Microsoft Entra joined devices can access on-premises resources if they are within reach of the on-prem domain controller, allowing seamless integration. However, joining devices does not require a premium P2 license, so that statement is false. Single sign-on remains active even if the device is disconnected from the corporate network, meaning it's not limited to corporate connectivity. Finally, Windows Hello is supported on Microsoft Entra joined devices, providing a secure and convenient authentication method through biometrics or PIN. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. In Intune, the company portal allows users to enroll devices and access published apps. The retire phase ensures protection of corporate data by allowing selective wipe or full device resets. Here's the explanation. The company portal is the main interface where users enroll their devices, manage settings, and access apps provided by their organization. The retire phase in Intune's device lifecycle is all about secure removal of a device from management. Selective wipe is a method that removes only corporate data while keeping personal files intact, making it ideal for bring your own device scenarios. Alternatively, a full reset wipes all data and settings, returning the device to its factory state. Both approaches help protect organizational data when devices are retired or no longer in use. What are two differences between add a work or school account and enroll in MDM only methods? Select two answers. A. Only the MDM only method joins the device to Microsoft Entra ID. B. Add a work or school account method requires an APN certificate. C. MDM only method doesn't require Microsoft Entra ID, P1 or P2 licenses. D. Add a work or school account method automatically enrolls into Intune if auto-enrollment is enabled. The correct answers are C. MDM only method doesn't require Microsoft Entra ID P1 or P2 licenses, and D. Add a work or school account method automatically enrolls into Intune if auto-enrollment is enabled. Here's why. The MDM only method is designed for organizations that do not have premium Microsoft Entra licensing, allowing device management without requiring P1 or P2 licenses. On the other hand, adding a work or school account can trigger automatic enrollment into Intune, provided the organization has the correct licensing and auto-enrollment is configured. Option A is incorrect because the MDM only method does not join the device to Microsoft Entra ID, and option B is wrong because APN certificates are only relevant for managing Apple devices, not Windows. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Android Enterprise work profiles can only be created on supported Android devices. True. An enrollment profile in Intune must match the Android Enterprise method selected. True. Managed Google Play is required for deploying iOS apps. False. The end-user experience during Android enrollment may vary depending on assigned policies. True. Here's the explanation. Android Enterprise work profiles require supported devices, as not every Android model supports work profile features. Also, the enrollment profile in Intune must match the Android Enterprise methods, such as fully managed or work profile, to ensure the correct setup is applied. The statement about managed Google Play for iOS is false because iOS apps are delivered through Apple Business Manager or the App Store, not Google Play. Finally, the Android enrollment experience can differ depending on policies like compliance rules, required apps, or configuration profiles, which may alter the steps a user sees during setup. A university is shifting to cloud infrastructure. Faculty will remain long-term, but students rotate frequently. The IT admin wants students to access Microsoft 365 using their own devices like Chromebooks and iPads. The university also wants to avoid expanding their on-premises directory infrastructure. Which two actions should the university take to support this environment? Select two answers. A. Use group policy to manage student-owned devices. B. Create Microsoft Entra accounts for students. C. Require students to join the ADDS domain. D. Join student devices to Microsoft Entra ID. E. Use Microsoft Configuration Manager for device management. The correct answers are B. Create Microsoft Entra accounts for students, and D. Join student devices to Microsoft Entra ID. Here's why. Creating Microsoft Entra accounts allows the university to manage student identities entirely in the cloud, which is ideal for rotating users without requiring on-premises infrastructure expansion. Joining student devices to Microsoft Entra ID enables single sign-on and access to Microsoft 365 from various devices, including Chromebooks and iPads, without needing them to join a traditional domain. Options A and C are unsuitable because group policy and ADDS require Windows domain-joined devices, which isn't practical for BYOD or non-Windows devices. Option E is also less appropriate because Microsoft Configuration Manager is better suited for managing corporate-owned devices rather than diverse personal devices used by students. For each iOS enrollment method or concept, drag it to its correct description. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Requires no manual configuration or company portal app to enroll is Apple Device Enrollment Program DEP. Supports additional device restrictions and policy options is supervised mode. Requires end user to install the company portal app manually is manual BYOD enrollment. Enables over-the-air deployment of enrollment profiles for company purchased devices is automated device enrollment ADE. Now let's go through the explanation. Apple Device Enrollment Program works as a zero-touch setup, meaning devices can be deployed without the user manually configuring settings or installing the company portal app, which saves time during mass rollouts. Meanwhile, supervised mode unlocks more powerful administrative controls, such as disabling certain features, which is especially important for corporate-owned iOS devices. In contrast, manual BYOD enrollment requires users to download and install the company portal app themselves, a common scenario when employees bring their own devices. Finally, automated device enrollment, which includes EP, allows IT to push enrollment profiles wirelessly during Setup Assistant, ensuring devices are fully configured before users even start using them. Arrange the following steps for enrolling a company-owned iOS device using Apple's Device Enrollment Program, DEP. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Power on the iOS device. Connect to Wi-Fi. Choose how to set up the device new or restore. Configuration screen appears showing that your company will manage the device. Log in with Apple ID. Agree to terms and conditions. Now let's go through the explanation. First, you power on the iOS device to start the Setup Assistant, which is the gateway to all enrollment actions. Next, you connect to Wi-Fi so the device can reach Apple's servers and fetch the pre-assigned management profile. Then, you choose whether to set up the device as new or restore from a backup, which determines initial data and configuration. Once this is done, the configuration screen appears to confirm that your organization will manage the device. After that, logging in with an Apple ID enables services like iCloud and app downloads. Finally, agreeing to the terms and conditions completes the process officially enrolling the device under company management. When a user enrolls their Android device using a work profile, what level of control does the Intune administrator have? Select one answer. A. The admin can manage the full device, including personal apps and data. B. The admin can only manage apps and actions within the work profile. C. The admin can track user SMS and phone calls. D. The admin must approve all Google Play app installations on the personal side. The correct answer is B. The admin can only manage apps and actions within the work profile. Now let's explain. In a work profile setup, Intune creates a secure, separate container on the device for corporate apps and data. This means the admin can configure settings, push apps, and apply policies only inside that work profile. However, the personal side of the device remains private, so the admin cannot see personal apps, messages, or calls. Likewise, app installations on the personal side happen without admin approval unless the device is fully managed. This separation ensures both security for company data and privacy for the user, making it ideal for bring your own device scenarios. Your company purchases iPhones from an authorized reseller and ships them directly to employees. You want the devices to be auto-enrolled into Intune without users needing to install the company portal app or configure anything manually. Which enrollment method should you use? Select one answer. A. Apple Configurator. B. Device Enrollment Manager. C. Apple Device Enrollment Program, DEP. D. Manual enrollment using Apple ID. The correct answer is C. Apple Device Enrollment Program, DEP. Now, I'm going to explain why this is the correct choice. The Apple Device Enrollment Program, or DEP, is designed specifically for scenarios like this. It enables zero-touch enrollment, meaning the employee just powers on the device and it automatically enrolls into Intune using Apple and Microsoft portals. This saves time and reduces errors compared to manual setup. In contrast, Apple Configurator requires manual connection to a Mac to enroll each device, which is not automated and not practical for large-scale deployments. Device Enrollment Manager is a concept within Intune for managing multiple devices, but isn't related to Apple's automated setup. Lastly, manual enrollment using an Apple ID is common for bring-your-own-device setups, where users manage their own devices, but it doesn't support fully managed zero-touch enrollment like DEP. So, DEP is the best choice for an organization that wants to streamline enrollment and manage company-owned iPhones efficiently. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Configuration, compliance, conditional access, and enrollment are the four major policy types available in Intune. Compliance policies define rules and settings that a device must meet to be marked as compliant. Now let's go through the explanation. Intune has four main policy types: configuration policies, which push specific settings to devices, compliance policies, which check if a device meets required conditions, conditional access policies, which control access based on compliance or other criteria, and enrollment policies, which govern how corporate devices are registered and set up. In this question, the missing first blank is enrollment, because it completes the list of policy types. As for the second blank, compliance policies rely on rules and settings to evaluate devices. For example, a compliance policy might require encryption to be enabled, a password to meet certain complexity requirements, or the device to run a minimum OS version. These rules and settings determine whether a device is considered compliant in Intune. This makes enrollment and rules and settings the correct choices for the blanks. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. A temporary user profile is deleted at the end of each session. True. Users can retain changes in a mandatory user profile after logging off. False. Enterprise state roaming can synchronize documents and pictures. False. UEV, user experience virtualization, reaches end of life in 2026. True. Now let's go through the explanation. A temporary profile is designed only for short-term use when a standard profile cannot load, so it is erased at the end of the session, making the first statement true. However, a mandatory profile always reverts to its predefined state after logoff, meaning users cannot retain changes, so the second statement is false. Enterprise state roaming focuses on syncing user settings like passwords, themes, and Windows configurations, but it does not sync personal files like documents or pictures, making the third statement false. Lastly, UEV is currently in extended support and is officially scheduled to reach end of life on April 14, 2026, which confirms the fourth statement is true. Which two Windows settings categories are synced by enterprise state roaming? Select two answers. A, theme settings. B, system services. C, ease of access settings. D, Windows Defender policies. E, network driver versions. The correct answers are A, theme settings, and C, ease of access settings. Now let's go through the explanation. Enterprise state roaming is designed to keep a user's experience consistent across multiple Windows devices by syncing certain personalization and accessibility settings. Theme settings, such as background images and accent colors, are synced so that the desktop look and feel remains familiar wherever the user signs in. Similarly, ease of access settings, like high contrast themes or narrator preferences, are also synced, ensuring accessibility configurations follow the user to any device. On the other hand, system services, Windows Defender policies, and network driver versions are not part of ESR's scope. Those are managed through other tools such as group policy, Intune, or manual device configuration. What is the purpose of the device features profile for iOS and macOS in Intune? Select one answer. A, to control access to Exchange email. B, to manage BitLocker encryption. C, to assign PKCS certificates to Apple devices. D, to enable or disable settings like AirPrint or notifications. The correct answer is D, to enable or disable settings like AirPrint or notifications. Now let's go through the explanation. A device features profile in Intune is specifically designed to configure functional options on Apple devices. For example, you can enable or disable AirPrint, control notification settings, or configure AirPlay destinations, giving administrators granular control over device capabilities. In contrast, controlling access to Exchange email is handled through the email profile. Managing BitLocker encryption is done via endpoint protection and applies only to Windows devices, not iOS or macOS. Assigning PKCS certificates to Apple devices is managed through the certificates profile, which focuses on authentication rather than feature toggling. This makes device features profiles the right choice for managing settings like AirPrint or notifications on Apple platforms. Match each Intune profile type to its platform-specific function or capability. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Restricts access to device hardware like camera on iOS. Device restrictions. Sets up AirPrint and shared device settings on Apple devices. Device features iOS and macOS. Configures a device to run a single app or multiple apps in kiosk mode. Kiosk enables secure remote access to corporate network, VPN. Now, let's go through the explanation. Device restrictions profiles allow administrators to control hardware and security-related settings, such as disabling the camera on iOS devices to prevent data leakage. Device features profiles for iOS and macOS handle Apple-specific options like setting up AirPrint printers, managing notifications, or configuring shared device modes. Kiosk profiles are used when you want a device to run only a single app or a defined set of apps, such as in a retail display or a check-in terminal, often with a customized home screen layout. Finally, VPN profiles configure the necessary connection settings so users and devices can securely access corporate resources over a remote network. Unused profile types like Edition Upgrade and Mode Switch or Identity Protection serve entirely different purposes and do not match the functions listed here. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. MD-102 allows app protection on personal devices without requiring device enrollment. True. App protection policies are supported for Android, iOS, and Windows. False. Intune app protection policies apply to both personal and work contexts. False. You can prevent saving of company data to personal storage using app protection policies. True. Now let's go through the explanation. MD-102, or Mobile Application Management Without Enrollment, lets organizations protect corporate data in apps on personal devices without enrolling those devices into MDM, which makes the first statement true. App protection policies currently apply to Android and iOS platforms, while Windows devices use a separate feature called Windows Information Protection, so the second statement is false. These policies operate only in the work context of supported apps, leaving personal app usage untouched, meaning the third statement is false. Finally, app protection policies can restrict saving of corporate data to personal locations or apps, which helps prevent data leakage, making the fourth statement true. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Win32 apps must be smaller than 30 gigabytes in size to be uploaded into Intune. True. Only Microsoft Entra joined devices are supported for Win32 app deployment. False. The Intune management extension supports apps with dependencies. True. Using both Win32 and Elobe apps during autopilot may cause deployment issues. True. Now, let's go through the explanation. Win32 apps have a strict upload size limit of 30 gigabytes in Intune, which makes the first statement true. The second statement is false because Win32 app deployment is supported not only for Microsoft Entra joined devices, but also for hybrid domain joined and group policy enrolled devices. The Intune management extension can handle app dependencies, meaning you can configure certain apps to install only if others are present. So the third statement is true. Finally, mixing Win32 and LRB apps during Windows Autopilot is known to cause deployment issues, so it's best to stick to Win32 apps for a smooth provisioning experience, confirming the fourth statement as true. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. The Intune Win App Util tool accepts the -H switch to display help information, while the Q switch allows for quiet execution without prompts. Now let's go through the explanation. The -H switch is used to show usage instructions and help details for the Intune Win App Util tool, which is useful when you need a quick reminder of available commands or syntax. On the other hand, the -Q switch runs the tool in quiet mode, meaning it executes without asking for user input during the process. This is particularly helpful in automated packaging scenarios where manual prompts would slow down the workflow. For example, if you're converting several applications into the .Intune Win format for Intune deployment, using -Q ensures the process runs smoothly without interruptions, while -H can be referenced at any time to confirm command options. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. When using the Enterprise Mode Site List portal, changes are made by submitting change requests, which are then approved before being deployed. This process supports pre-production testing to validate site behavior before live use. Now let's go through the explanation. In the Enterprise Mode Site List portal, any modification to the site list begins as a change request, which acts as a formal proposal for updates. These requests go through an approval process to ensure only verified and intentional changes are implemented. Once approved, the updated list can be deployed to production devices. Importantly, the portal also supports pre-production testing, allowing IT teams to validate how sites will behave with the updated configuration before rolling them out live. For example, an organization might test compatibility fixes for a legacy web application in a controlled group before deploying them to all users, reducing the risk of unexpected issues. For each Intune MAM policy monitoring view, drag it to the appropriate description in the correct match column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Provides a high-level overview of user compliance, flagged users, and top protected apps. Summary view. Allows searching for a single user to check their app compliance status. Detailed view. Generates reports for user activity, app protection status, and configuration details. Reporting view shows the number of users with apps not targeted by any policy. Summary view displays managed and unmanaged MAM app activity per user. Reporting view. Now, let's go through the explanation. The summary view is designed to give administrators a quick, high-level look at overall compliance, including the number of flagged users, the top protected and unprotected apps, and the count of users without any policy applied. In contrast, the detailed view allows for a focused search on a specific user, showing their compliance status, the apps they use with MAM policies, and their check-in status. The reporting view is more data-heavy, producing reports on user activity, app protection status, and configuration details. It also helps track both managed and unmanaged app usage, which is vital for identifying potential data leakage points. Unused views like policy creation or device enrollment are unrelated to MAM policy monitoring in this context. Arrange the steps for deploying a Microsoft Store app using Microsoft Intune in the correct order. Instruction. Drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Add an app from the Microsoft Store via the Intune Admin Center. Search for the app and select it from the Microsoft Store. Enter app details such as name, description, and category. Assign the app to selected groups of users or devices. Review the configuration and create the app deployment. Now, let's go through the explanation. You begin by going to the Intune Admin Center, navigating to Apps, selecting All Apps, and then choosing Add. From there, you select Microsoft Store app as the type. Next, you search for the required app, filtering by name or publisher, and then select it from the search results. After that, you enter key details like the app name, description, category, and install behavior so users see accurate information in the company portal. Then you assign the app to specific user or device groups, choosing whether it should be required, available, or uninstalled. Finally, you review all your settings and select Create, which finalizes the deployment and makes the app available according to your assignments. Match each Microsoft Store app metadata field to its correct characteristic. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Package identifier, read-only store ID, insist all behavior, system or user selection, publisher, pre-populated but editable. Now let's go through the explanation. The package identifier is a unique store ID pulled directly from Microsoft Store metadata. It's read-only, meaning you cannot change it, and it serves to uniquely identify the app within Intune. Install behavior determines whether the app is installed in the system context or the user context, and when both options are available, you must choose one. If only one is supported, the field is preset and locked. Lastly, the publisher field comes pre-populated from the store but can be edited before deployment, giving administrators flexibility to adjust how the publisher name is displayed. For example, you might correct a publisher name to align with internal naming conventions before publishing it to your users. What are two capabilities of the modern Microsoft Store app experience integrated with Intune? Select two answers. A, you can browse and search for Store apps directly within Intune. B, you can synchronize apps via the Microsoft Graph API. C, you can monitor the installation progress and results for Store apps. D, you can assign offline licensed apps from Microsoft Store for Business. The correct answers are A, you can browse and search for Store apps directly within Intune, and C, you can monitor the installation progress and results for Store apps. Now, let's go through the explanation. With the modern Microsoft Store integration, administrators can search for and browse Store apps right inside the Intune Admin Center, eliminating the need to jump between separate portals. This makes finding and adding apps far more efficient. In addition, Intune now allows you to monitor installation progress and results for Store apps. so you can see whether an app has successfully deployed, is pending, or has failed, which helps with troubleshooting. By contrast, the Microsoft Graph API Sync feature was part of the old Store for Business model, which has been retired. Similarly, assigning offline licensed apps was also tied to the legacy experience and is no longer supported, as the modern store focuses on online license deployments. You manage a group of contractors who are not enrolled in Intune but require access to a company app. You want them to download and install the app on their own using a browser-based method. What is the most appropriate way to assign the app? Select one answer. A. Assign the app as required. B. Assign the app as available for enrolled devices. C. Assign the app as uninstall. D. Assign the app as available with or without enrollment. The correct answer is D. Assign the app as available with or without enrollment. Let's break down why this is the correct choice. Assigning the app as available with or without enrollment lets users install it directly from the web-based company portal, even if their devices are not managed by Intune. This is perfect for contractors, partners, or temporary staff who need quick access without going through full device enrollment. In comparison, assigning the app as required only works for devices already enrolled in Intune, and making it available for enrolled devices limits access to managed endpoints. Choosing uninstall would remove the app, which is the opposite of your goal. By using the available with or without enrollment option, you give external users an easy, secure way to get the app on their own. You've assigned a store app as available for enrolled devices, but a user says they can't see it in their company portal. The device is enrolled. What is the most likely reason the user cannot see the app? Select one answer. A. The app was assigned to a device group instead of a user group. B. The user hasn't accepted a required license agreement. C. The app assignment was set to required instead of available. D. The user is not linked as the primary user of the enrolled device. The correct answer is D. The user is not linked as the primary user of the enrolled device. Here's why that answer makes the most sense. When you assign an app as available for enrolled devices, it only appears in the company portal if the signed-in user is recognized as the device's primary user. If that link is missing, the app simply won't show up for them even though the device is enrolled. Assigning the app to a device group instead of a user group doesn't control its visibility in this scenario. License agreements also have no role in whether the app appears in the portal. Lastly, if the app were set to required, it would install automatically without needing to be visible, so that wouldn't cause this problem either. This is why making sure the primary user relationship is correctly set is key for availability. Your organization supports BYOD users who prefer not to enroll their devices. You want to allow these users to access an internal app through the company portal website without forcing enrollment. What should you do? Select one answer. A. Assign the app as required to the user group. B. Configure the app with MD-102, app protection without enrollment. C. Mark the app as uninstall for unmanaged devices. D. Use the built-in public store instead of Intune. The correct answer is B. Configure the app with MD-102, also known as app protection without enrollment. Let's walk through the logic here. MD-102 allows you to deploy apps and apply data protection policies without requiring the device to be fully enrolled in Intune, which makes it perfect for BYOD scenarios where users prefer to keep their devices unmanaged. Assigning the app as required won't work because unenrolled devices can't receive required apps. Marking the app as uninstall is irrelevant for devices that have never been enrolled, and using the public store bypasses Intune's management, meaning you lose data loss prevention controls. By using MD-102, you strike the right balance between user convenience and corporate data security. Which two statements correctly describe compat mode tags used in enterprise mode site lists? Select two answers. A. They define which modern Chromium features to enable. They specify the IE compatibility version to render the site. C. They are required to activate ActiveX controls. D. They appear in the XML config file as metadata. E. They allow Microsoft Edge to override group policy. The correct answers are B. They specify the IE compatibility version to render the site, and D. They appear in the XML config file as metadata. Here's the thinking behind it. Compat mode tags tell Microsoft Edge's IE mode exactly which Internet Explorer version to emulate for a given site, such as IE 7 Enterprise or IE 11. This ensures older web apps render and behave as expected. These tags are part of the enterprise mode site lists XML configuration, acting as metadata that guides rendering instructions. In contrast, they have nothing to do with enabling modern Chromium features, and ActiveX support in IE mode does not require these tags specifically. They also don't override group policy, since their purpose is limited to controlling rendering mode, not policy settings. Which two actions can be performed while configuring Microsoft 365 apps deployment in Intune? Select two answers. A. Set Bing as the default search engine using Microsoft Search extension. B. Choose between installing apps in preview or production update channels. C. Force restart devices after installation completes. D. Deploy apps without specifying a publisher. E. Assign both 32-bit and 64-bit apps in a single deployment. The correct answers are A. Set Bing as the default search engine using Microsoft Search extension, and B. Choose between installing apps in preview or production update channels. Let's unpack the reasoning behind this. When deploying Microsoft 365 apps through Intune, you can enable an optional Microsoft Search in Bing extension that sets Bing as the default search engine in Chrome, allowing users to search company resources directly from the browser. You also have control over which update channel the apps use, letting you choose between preview builds for testing or standard production channels for stability. On the other hand, there's no setting in the Microsoft 365 apps configuration to force a device restart after installation. The publisher is always pre-filled as Microsoft and can't be removed, so you can't deploy without specifying one. Finally, you must select either 32-bit or 64-bit per deployment. You can't assign both architectures in the same deployment profile. Arrange the following phases of the Microsoft Intune app lifecycle in the correct order. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Add, deploy, configure, protect, retire. Let's walk through the logic step by step. The lifecycle begins with add, where administrators bring the desired apps into Intune by uploading packages or linking store apps. Next is deploy, which involves assigning the apps to specific users or devices and tracking installation results. After deployment comes configure, where settings, preferences, and update behaviors are applied to tailor the app's functionality. Protect is the next phase, focusing on safeguarding corporate data through conditional access rules or app protection policies. Finally, retire closes the cycle by removing outdated or unused apps from devices, ensuring the environment stays clean and secure. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Users set up a Windows Hello gesture after a successful two-step verification. True. The Windows Hello gesture must always be a biometric scan. False. Microsoft Entra SSPR allows you to define custom security questions in your native language. True. Users can register for SSPR at the Microsoft Entra application portal. True. Here's the thinking behind it. After enrollment, Windows Hello prompts the user to create a gesture, which could be a PIN, facial recognition, or fingerprint scan. So the first statement is true. The second is false because biometrics are optional. A PIN is also acceptable. Admins configuring Microsoft Entra self-service password reset can create custom security questions in any language, making the third statement true. Finally, users can register for SSPR through the Microsoft Entra application portal at myapps.microsoft.com, which confirms the fourth statement as true. What does Windows Hello for Business plan to support in future scenarios involving third-party services? Select one answer. A. Support for mobile device management via Exchange. B. Support for biometric fallback to password. C. Support for FIDO v2.0 based relying party services. D. Support for remote desktop over non-encrypted channels. The correct answer is C. Support for FIDO v2.0 based relying party services. Here's why that answer makes the most sense. Windows Hello for Business is moving toward broader interoperability by supporting third-party services that rely on the FIDO v2.0 standard. This would allow users to authenticate to a wider range of applications and services securely without passwords, extending WHFB's passwordless vision beyond just Microsoft ecosystems. The other options don't align with this roadmap. Biometric fallback to password isn't the direction WHFB is headed, since PIN fallback already exists. Mobile device management via Exchange is unrelated to WHFB authentication, and remote desktop over non-encrypted channels would undermine security goals rather than enhance them. You are preparing the infrastructure for an always-on VPN deployment in your organization. You want to ensure all the required components are in place before enrolling client devices. Select two answers. A. You need a remote access server with RAS gateway capabilities. B. You need Active Directory Certificate Services, ADCS. C. You need Microsoft Azure VM configured with remote access role. D. You need a standalone DNS server with no domain integration. The correct answers are A. You need a remote access server with RAS gateway capabilities, and B. You need Active Directory Certificate Services, ADCS. Let's walk through the logic step by step. The always-on VPN setup requires a remote access server with RAS gateway capabilities to handle and route VPN connections securely. In addition, a public key infrastructure is essential, and ADCS provides the means to issue and manage the certificates used for authentication and encryption between clients and the VPN gateway. Deploying the remote access role on an Azure VM isn't supported for always-on VPN in this scenario, so option C is not valid. Likewise, a standalone DNS server with no domain integration would cause name resolution issues. You need domain-integrated DNS to support both internal and external resolution for VPN clients. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. When signed in as a global administrator, you can assign Microsoft Graph API permissions directly from Graph Explorer. This allows you to test API calls interactively and adjust scopes as needed. Here's the thinking behind it. Only a global administrator role has the authority to grant Microsoft Graph API permissions from within the Graph Explorer interface, because these changes can affect data access across the tenant. Graph Explorer itself is a web-based tool that lets you run real-time Microsoft Graph API queries, see responses, and adjust permission scopes on the fly. For example, if you're testing an Intune configuration retrieval query, you can request additional scopes right there in Graph Explorer, grant them, and immediately rerun the query to confirm the results. Your team needs to export a current list of all enrolled Windows devices from Microsoft Intune, including OS version and ownership type. You also want to customize which fields are included in the output. Select one answer. A. Export the Device Compliance Summary Report from the Reports tab. B. Use Microsoft Graph Explorer to pull the data using a REST query. C. Use the All Devices view under Devices and customize columns and filters before exporting. D. Access the audit logs and download the last export log. The correct answer is C. Use the All Devices view under Devices and customize columns and filters before exporting. Here's why that answer makes the most sense. The All Devices view in Intune lets you see every enrolled device and tailor the output by adding or removing columns, as well as filtering results to match your needs. Once you've configured the view to show details like OS version and ownership type, you can export it directly to a CSV for reporting or analysis. While Microsoft Graph Explorer could also retrieve this information, it requires REST API knowledge and extra steps, making it more complex than necessary for this task. The Device Compliance Summary Report only shows aggregate compliance data, not detailed device listings, and audit logs focus on configuration changes rather than inventory. Arrange the following steps in setting up and using Windows Hello for Business. Instruction. Drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Perform two-step verification during enrollment. Prompt user to set a biometric gesture or PIN. Store biometric data securely on local device. Authenticate the user using Windows Hello. Let's walk through the sequence. The process begins with two-step verification, which confirms the user's identity during enrollment and ensures only authorized individuals can set up Windows Hello. Once verified, the system prompts the user to create a gesture, such as a PIN or a biometric scan, to use for sign-in. This gesture data is stored securely on the local device, never sent over the network or stored in a central database, protecting both security and privacy. After setup, each time the user signs in, Windows Hello authenticates them using the configured gesture, providing a fast and secure login experience. For each Windows Server remote access technology or service, drag it to the appropriate box in the correct match column to match it against its function. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. enables publishing of internal apps and services using web-based protocols, web application proxy. Used to configure VPN or direct access server roles. RAS gateway provides persistent connectivity without manual VPN setup. Always-on VPN supports dynamic routing via BGP and NAT for site-to-site VPN scenarios. RAS gateway synchronizes local folders with file servers from outside the network, work folders. Here's how this all comes together. Web application proxy is ideal for securely publishing internal web-based apps to external users, letting them access resources without exposing your internal network directly. RAS gateway is versatile, serving both as a VPN or direct access server and providing advanced capabilities like BGP and NAT for complex site-to-site VPN scenarios. Always-on VPN takes the hassle out of connecting by maintaining a persistent, seamless VPN connection for Windows 10 and newer clients. Finally, work folders lets users keep their files synced with internal file servers even when they're outside the network, providing flexibility for remote work without sacrificing data access. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. Microsoft Defender for Endpoint uses behavioral sensors built into Windows to collect data, which is analyzed using cloud security analytics and threat intelligence. Let's unpack the reasoning behind this. Behavioral sensors run continuously within Windows, monitoring activities such as process execution, file changes, registry modifications, and network connections. This raw telemetry is then sent to Microsoft's cloud, where cloud security analytics process it using big data techniques and machine learning models. By combining this analysis with global threat intelligence, Defender for Endpoint can detect suspicious patterns and emerging threats far earlier than signature-based antivirus methods. For example, even if malware is brand new and has no known signature, unusual behavior, like mass file encryption or abnormal network calls, can still trigger alerts and automated responses. What distinguishes runtime protection from boot time protection in Windows Defender System Guard? Select one answer. A. It scans the registry and file system. B. It uses VBS to isolate critical system processes. C. It only protects the Windows bootloader. D. It prevents antivirus tampering. The correct answer is B. It uses VBS to isolate critical system processes. Here's why that's the best choice. Runtime protection focuses on securing the operating system while it's running, using virtualization-based security to isolate sensitive processes like credential guard so they can't be tampered with, even if other parts of the OS are compromised. Boot time protection, on the other hand, is about ensuring the Windows bootloader and firmware haven't been altered before the OS starts. Scanning the registry or file system is handled by antivirus and endpoint detection tools, not System Guard. Preventing antivirus tampering might be an indirect benefit, but it's not the core function that sets runtime protection apart. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps provides visibility into both Microsoft and third-party cloud services. True. CSBs rely exclusively on firewalls to detect shadow IT applications. False. Using conditional access app control in parallel with another CSB may introduce latency. True. You must have a Microsoft 365 productivity license to use Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. False. Let's break this down. Defender for Cloud Apps is a cloud access security broker that works across both Microsoft and non-Microsoft services. So the first statement is true. CSBs don't rely solely on firewall logs. They can also collect data via API connectors, endpoint agents, and reverse proxy integrations, making the second statement false. Running conditional access app control alongside another CASB means traffic is proxied through two security layers, which can cause delays, so the third statement is true. Finally, you don't need a Microsoft 365 Productivity Suite license to use Defender for Cloud Apps, so the fourth statement is false. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. To configure Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, a user must be assigned either the Global Administrator or Security Administrator role in Microsoft Entra ID or Office 365. Let's walk through the reasoning behind this. Both the Global Administrator and Security Administrator roles have the required permissions to configure and manage Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. The Global Administrator role offers full access to all administrative features across Microsoft 365, making it the highest privilege level. The security administrator role, while more focused, still grants the ability to set up security solutions, including Defender for cloud apps, without giving full tenant-wide administrative power. In contrast, roles like compliance manager, billing administrator, or report reader lack the permissions necessary to change Defender for cloud app settings. For example, a billing administrator could view invoices but would be unable to connect APIs or adjust threat detection policies, which are essential tasks for securing cloud applications. A user encrypts personal files using EFS but later loses access due to a hard drive crash. The user didn't back up the certificate. What should the organization have implemented to recover the files? Select one answer. A. Encrypting with BitLocker and TPM. B. WIP with silent mode. C. A DRA certificate configured in advance. D. Azure RMS automatic classification. The correct answer is C. A DRA certificate configured in advance. Here's why that answer is correct. A data recovery agent, or DRA, is a special account with a recovery certificate that can decrypt EFS encrypted files if the original user key is lost or unavailable. By setting up a DRA before encryption takes place, the organization ensures that even in cases like a hardware failure or a lost private key, files can still be accessed. BitLocker with TPM protects entire drives, not individual files encrypted with EFS, so it wouldn't help here. Windows Information Protection in silent mode is focused on separating and protecting corporate data, not personal EFS files. Azure RMS applies persistent document encryption, typically for sharing and classification, but it does not provide recovery for locally EFS encrypted content. Arrange the sequence of how EFS encrypts and protects a file on a Windows client. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. User chooses to encrypt a file using EFS. Windows generates a symmetric key to encrypt the file. The symmetric key is encrypted using the user's public key. The encrypted symmetric key is stored in the file header. The user's private key is required to decrypt the file later. Let's walk through the process step by step. It begins when the user decides to encrypt a file using EFS, which triggers Windows to create a unique symmetric key for that file. This symmetric key handles the actual data encryption because symmetric encryption is much faster than public key cryptography. Next, to protect this symmetric key, Windows encrypts it with the user's public key, ensuring that only the matching private key can unlock it. This encrypted key is then stored in the file's header as metadata, traveling with the file wherever it goes. Later, when the file needs to be opened, the system uses the user's private key to decrypt the symmetric key, which in turn decrypts the file's contents. For each BitLocker-related concept, drag it to the appropriate boxes in the correct match column to match it against its description in the option column. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Encrypts the operating system volume and verifies early boot integrity. BitLocker encrypts removable drives such as USB flash drives. BitLocker to Go provides file-level encryption that is independent of drive location. Encrypting file system, EFS, enables encryption automatically on new Windows 10 Plus devices. Device encryption allows self-service recovery and centralized management for BitLocker. MBAM. Let's walk through the reasoning. BitLocker encrypts full volumes, including the OS drive, and relies on the TPM to check early boot integrity so tampering is detected before Windows starts. BitLocker to Go extends these protections to removable media like USB drives, keeping portable data safe. EFS is different because it focuses on file-level encryption, and the protection remains even if the file is copied elsewhere. Device encryption is a lighter version of BitLocker that automatically turns on for supported hardware with minimal user interaction, common in Windows 10 and later. Lastly, MBAM, or Microsoft BitLocker Administration and Monitoring, enables centralized policy control, compliance reporting, and self-service key recovery for enterprise environments. Match each Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps feature or function to its corresponding purpose. Each item may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Connect apps and gain deep visibility into their use. App connectors. Monitor cloud usage using firewall or endpoint logs. Cloud discovery. Enforce access and session rules for catalog apps. Conditional access app control. Create risk-adjusted filters using tags, IP ranges, or business unit grouping, IP tagging, and data organization. Here's how they fit together. App connectors integrate directly with supported cloud services like Microsoft 365 or Salesforce to give instant visibility and control over activity, data, and usage patterns. Cloud discovery works by analyzing logs from endpoints or firewalls to detect shadow IT and assess risk. Conditional access app control leverages Microsoft Entra ID to enforce session-based rules, such as blocking downloads or restricting access to certain content in real time. Finally, IP tagging and data organization help categorize traffic and apply policies based on IP ranges, tags, or business units, which adds valuable context for risk-based filtering. What role does the TPM play in Windows Defender System Guard's remote attestation? Select one answer. A. Encrypts user files. B. Launches antivirus during boot. C. Stores measurement data securely. D. Filters DNS requests. The correct answer is stores measurement data securely. Now let's explain. The TPM, or Trusted Platform Module, works like a secure vault inside your device, capturing integrity measurements during the boot process and sealing them so they can be verified later during remote attestation. This process ensures the system's startup sequence hasn't been altered by malicious software. Encrypting user files is handled by BitLocker, launching antivirus during boot is the OS's job, and filtering DNS requests is unrelated to TPM. In real-world terms, think of the TPM as your PC's black box recorder, keeping a tamper-proof record of its secure startup. Which of the following are examples of SaaS apps commonly supported by CASBs? Select three answers. A. CRM systems. B. Service desks. C. VM hypervisors. D. Content collaboration platforms, CCPs. E. Operating system images. The correct answers are A, B, and D. CRM systems, service desks, and content collaboration platforms. Now let's explain. CASBs, or Cloud Access Security Brokers, focus on securing and managing SaaS applications that organizations rely on daily. CRM systems like Salesforce are a prime example because they store sensitive customer data that needs strict governance. Likewise, service desk platforms such as Zendesk handle support tickets and potentially confidential user information, making them a natural fit for CASB oversight. Content collaboration platforms like OneDrive or Box are also high on the list since they deal with file sharing and cloud storage, both common risk points. On the other hand, VM hypervisors and operating system images belong to the IaaS and infrastructure world, which CASBs are not primarily designed to protect. In simple terms, if it's a cloud-based business app used by people day to day, it's likely in CASB's wheelhouse. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. Application compatibility should be addressed as a planned, environment-wide process. True. Applying updates can resolve many compatibility issues. True. Replacing apps is always cheaper than fixing compatibility issues. False. Compatibility issues caused by architecture changes are easy to detect visually. False. Now let's explain. Treating application compatibility as a planned, organization-wide initiative ensures consistency, reduces unexpected downtime, and avoids last-minute firefighting. Additionally, keeping applications updated is one of the simplest and most effective ways to fix known compatibility problems, as vendors often release patches for exactly that reason. However, assuming that replacing an app is always cheaper is misleading. New software may involve licensing costs, staff retraining, and migration expenses that outweigh a compatibility fix. Finally, architecture-related issues, such as a 32-bit app struggling on a 64-bit OS, are rarely obvious at a glance and typically require targeted testing or analysis to uncover. For each statement below, indicate whether the answer is true or false. MDT can display real-time deployment status to the user. True boot images in MDT are stored only in ISO format and cannot be delivered via PXE. False. You must ensure the correct x86-x64 boot image is used for each target device. True, the MDT interface can be customized to prompt for user-specific input during deployment. True. Now let's explain. MDT gives users a visible progress bar and task sequence details during deployment, helping both technicians and end users track the process. Contrary to the misconception, MDT boot images aren't limited to ISO format. They can be delivered via PXE, USB drives, DVDs, and other methods, making them highly flexible. Ensuring the correct architecture match, whether x86 or x64, is critical, especially for UEFI-based systems that require compatible boot images. Finally, MDT's LTI wizard can be tailored to ask for custom input, such as device names, departments, or asset tags, making deployments more interactive and specific to organizational needs. Fill in the blanks by selecting the correct options from the drop-down menus. In Configuration Manager, collections are found in the Assets and Compliance workspace. You can locate custom device collections under Device Collections. Now let's explain. In Configuration Manager, the Assets and Compliance workspace is where you manage both users and devices, including grouping them into collections for targeted deployments and policy application. Within this workspace, the Device Collections node specifically holds all device-based collections, whether built-in or custom, allowing administrators to easily find and manage groups of managed endpoints. This structure helps keep deployments organized and ensures that software, updates, and configurations are applied to the correct set of devices. Arrange the following steps involved in a desktop deployment process in the correct order. Instruction: drag and drop the items into the correct order, starting with the first step at the top. Capture a network map and inventory existing systems. Determine hardware and application readiness. Define a strategy for unsupported applications. Back up and capture user data. Deploy new systems using automated tools. Train users on new features. Now let's explain. The process begins with capturing a complete network map and inventory of all existing systems, so you have full visibility of the environment. Next, you assess hardware and application readiness to determine which components are compatible and which require updates or replacement. Then, you define a strategy for handling unsupported applications, which may involve virtualization, updates, or replacements. Once the plan is finalized, you back up and capture user data to ensure nothing is lost during migration. With preparations complete, you deploy the new systems using automated tools for efficiency and consistency. Finally, you provide training so users can adapt quickly and make full use of the new features. For each Configuration Manager component, drag it to the appropriate boxes in the correct match column to match it against its description in the option column. Contains references to all imported device drivers, driver catalog, used to automate OS deployments through defined steps. Task sequence stores compressed reference files and folders needed to install an OS. Operating system image source files for delivering a vanilla image or performing upgrade operating system upgrade package. Now let's explain. The driver catalog is where Configuration Manager keeps references to all imported device drivers, enabling you to manage and assign them to specific boot images or driver packages. The task sequence is essential for automating OS deployment steps, from partitioning disks to installing applications, ensuring consistent installations. The operating system image contains compressed reference files and folders, typically in WIM format, which are used to install the OS. Finally, the operating system upgrade package provides the source files, often from ISO or DVD media, for performing in-place upgrades or deploying a clean vanilla OS image.